From New York Times Opinion, I'm Lulu Garcia Navarro, and this is First Person. It's happened to you. It has certainly happened to me. You open up your sleek new iPhone box, you power it on, you see that friendly hello animate your screen in those loopy cursive letters. You feel joy at your brand new piece of technology. You are unstoppable. Except, of course, for when you drop it 4 days later and the screen shatters. What happens next, many people argue, is an indictment of the state of consumer rights in America. If you take your phone back to the manufacturer, who knows what they'll charge you to fix it? And for some problems, they might tell you that it's not possible to fix it at all. And most people don't think of tech repairs as something that they can do themselves. But now there's a law in New York State that's starting to put more pressure on companies, compelling them to make it easier for you and anyone else to fix your electronics. One of the people who helped write that law is Kyle Wiens. Kyle is the CEO of iFixit, a kind of Wikipedia for DIY repair manuals. And he's been part of the so-called right to repair movement since before there were iPhones. Wiens argues the current system leads to burdensome costs, electronic waste, and hurts consumers. Today, Kyle Wiens on breaking up with buying and embracing repair. First of all, I want to say congratulations. First big legislative victory for right to repair. I'm catching you, I think, at a very interesting moment.
This is an amazing moment. This is kind of the culmination of almost 20 years of work to get a broad electronics right to repair bill on the books.
We'll talk about what's next, but I want to understand a little bit about how we got here. I want to ask you to take me back, in fact, to the Paleolithic age. When did you buy your first computer? Were you always into tech?
I always wanted to be into tech. As a kid, I was just excited about computers. The first computer that I was able to buy was, I was working at a computer repair shop in high school. I was making $6.50 an hour. And I remember the computer was $1,800. You can do the math and think about how many hours that was to get to where I could afford a computer. And it was an iBook with a handle on it.
Oh, I remember those.
I was working at an Apple authorized repair shop. So they sold new Apple computers. They were able to do repairs under warranty. And it was kind of my first job as a freshman in high school. I was having to take the school bus to work. It was the whole thing.
Oh, what year was this?
I started in 1998. The iMac launched August 15th, 1998. And we had like an iMac shaped cake at the office. Everyone was very excited.
So you were into tech early, you were working in tech, and you worked to get this computer. I imagine at some point, as they all do, it broke down. Tell me what happened.
So I'm at university. I am studying computer science, and my computer is my lifeline. It's how I get everything done. And I dropped it off my bed onto the power plug. And it was one of those things where if I stood on one leg and jiggled it just right, I could charge it. And I didn't have the money to pay someone else to fix it. So I said, okay, well, I can fix this. It's just a loose joint inside. Maybe I can solder it back together. And my grandfather had given me he knew I was studying computer science. So he gave me a soldering iron when I was going to school.
Okay.
And so I started trying to take the thing apart and very quickly got stuck. It was just complicated. There was tabs and latches and it was just complicated. So I did, I think, what any of us would do. And I Googled it. And I was shocked. I could not find any information online. And from my experience working at the repair shop, I knew what Apple service manuals looked like. And it was shocking to me that those manuals were not available online. So I bumbled my way through the repair. I got it done without the information. I broke a few latches along the way, but I got the computer back together. I got it working. And then I did some research. I was like, why was this so hard? And I found several websites that had previously had the service manual and had posted and said that they had gotten legal takedown notices from Apple saying this is our copyrighted material and you need to remove it. And so they had all complied. So Apple's legal team had effectively censored this information from the internet.
So what did you think about that you couldn't legally access this information? I mean, that's kind of a big thing.
Yeah, this got me very angry because it's my computer. I own it. I worked very hard to buy it from Apple. I paid them for it. Why can't I fix it? And why is this information forbidden fruit? And that kind of set me on a journey to figure out, like, how can we possibly, because it really seems like if you think about all the computers in the world, if the companies are censoring access to know how to fix them, what kind of society do we live in? Like, everything is disposable at that point.
Okay, so you're mad. You've got this broken computer that you kind of managed to fix. But what did you decide to do next?
So at that point, I was talking with my buddy who also had computer repair experience. And we said, well, we've done it already. Let's just take it apart again and let's write some instructions for people. So I knew what the service manuals looked like, and it didn't seem that hard to write one. So we took apart a handful of other Apple computers and wrote repair instructions for them. It is maybe kind of the nice thing about being young and naive is no one told me you can't write a service manual for somebody else's thing. So we just did it. And we wrote service manuals for 6 Apple laptops. We put them online, and they got very popular very quickly.
So popular that Kyle and his friend decided to start a business while they were still in school, fixing gadgets and providing long-distance tech support to customers.
I mean, it was tense sometimes. I remember like being on the phone with a customer doing tech support or something. They're trying to fix their computer and I'm trying to help them. And I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, I got to get off the phone so I can get to my midterm.
Kyle graduated in 2005, and pretty quickly he decided that the business he'd started from his dorm was the one he wanted to spend his career building. Through the mid-2000s, iFixit quickly became a go-to resource for amateurs and third-party service shops. In those early days, the site mostly focused on Apple products.
At the beginning, I just had this window into, I knew what the service manuals looked like, and I knew they weren't on the internet. And so just by bridging that gap, it was amazing kind of what it unleashed. Apple was like the first electronics manufacturer that had complete public open source service manuals for all their products online. But it was because I did it for them, or if you're from Apple's perspective, maybe we did it to them.
I'm thinking about a phrase that you just used, which is you did it to them when you're talking about Apple and putting these manuals up on the internet. And it makes me wonder, how did the tech companies react to what you were doing?
This is where you come into, I think, that the interesting sort of paradox of right to repair is that I really think all humans are on the side of being able to fix things, but corporate profit interests are not necessarily. So if you talk with the technicians at Apple, the geniuses at the Apple Store or the folks on their tech support lines, they love iFixit. They rely on it. They use us. And so it was symbiotic. But I think from the top down, Apple's kind of policy was like, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't discuss iFixit. But they started banning people from their forums that would tell people how to fix things or how to recover data from their computers. For a long time, the Apple geniuses in stores were referring people to us. And then one day, globally, that all stopped, like on the same day. And it was clear that some memo had gone out. Don't tell people about the secret repair forum.
You know, we've been talking a lot about Apple, but in the early days of iFixit, was it just computers you were offering support for, or were there other things as well?
So we started purely with Apple. And when I decided, all right, iFixit is going to be my life's mission, we're going to focus on this, that was when we started to expand this beyond Apple. And we, at the same time, we knew we needed a model that wasn't just me taking things apart and taking pictures. And so we buckled down and we wrote the software that turned into iFixit is a wiki. It's an open community platform where anyone can post repair information.
So is that what it is now? I mean, basically like a...
That's what we are now.
Yeah.
iFixit is a community resource. It's the largest service manual in the world. And we have repair information for everything from kids' toys to refrigerators and lawnmowers and you name it. And we sell tools and parts alongside the information.
One of the things that really strikes me about iFixit is its community spirit, because what you're describing there is this open source, right? Where everyone's kind of pitching in to help expand the base of knowledge. Can you give me some examples of how you've seen that in action?
So we have a forum we call Answers, and people go and they post their questions and say, hey, my computer doesn't turn on, or I spilled beer on my phone, or whatever it is. And then the community members come along and help answer the question. And it's really, these are people that get joy out of helping people. One of our top community members goes by Old Turkey on the forums. His name is Mike Tier, and
Old Turkey.
Old Turkey. He's a great guy. He's a white-haired nurse from Texas. He helps people all day at the hospital, and then he comes home and he helps people on our forums. And he has helped hundreds of thousands of people learn how to fix their stuff.
You know, the other thing watching your videos, it made me think about how fixing stuff can be empowering.
Today I'm going to show you an easy and inexpensive solution to resurrect that dead Xbox.
The Apple Watch Series 7.
The Samsung Galaxy S9.
I'm going to get my parts and tools together so I can get started.
You need a Pro Y000 screwdriver to get into this thing.
Some alcohol, brush to clean, tweezers.
And then you heat it up.
Pop the display off, put it back on, and that's it.
Saves you money and it saves the planet as well.
I've been conditioned to think that if I opened up my iPhone, it would be this mystical object that I couldn't possibly fix and that probably a Gorgon would come out and eat me. But the point of all this, you're saying, is that that's wrong.
I don't quite know where this came from. This is a society permeating a belief. I do events. I remember I was at the USA Science and Technology Fair in Washington, D.C., which is an event aimed at elementary and middle school age kids. And our booth was take stuff apart and put it back together. And so I'd have kids walk up to me and I would hand them an iPod and say, hey, do you want to take this apart? And the sixth grade kid would look at me like I was insane because every adult their entire life has been telling them, don't take that thing apart.
Yeah. Why
don't we let the kids take things apart? I don't know. I don't understand it.
Because of the Gorgon.
The Gorgon inside the iPod. One thing that I think leads to this is a lot of products have those warranty void if removed stickers on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that tends to stop people because like, oh, there's a rule that I shouldn't take the thing apart. It is actually illegal for the manufacturer to void the warranty if you open the thing.
I want to ask you, as someone who takes apart gadgets and looks inside of them, what have you seen happen over time to these objects? I mean, has the way that they're built actually changed to make fixing them more difficult or less worth someone's while?
I think it depends on the value of the object and how you value your time. Many things were fixable back in the day and are still very easy to fix. TVs, for example, very straightforward and easy to fix. And so if a $1,000 TV is worth 2 hours of your time to repair, you absolutely should do that. I think that probably the biggest change is that it is totally unintuitive and non-obvious when you look at an object, whether you'll be able to fix it or not. If you were to go into a Best Buy and want some wireless earbuds and you're looking at the shelf and they have the Samsung Galaxy Buds and the Apple AirPods, I think most people would just pick the one that matches their phone. Both of them get fantastic reviews. They're both great products on day one. The Samsung Galaxy Buds have a replaceable battery. You can pop them open easily and replace the battery every 18 months. The Apple AirPods are glued together, and it is impossible for anyone, including me, to swap the battery in those things. And so AirPods are disposable. Like anyone who had the original AirPods will tell you now that they had to buy new ones because the batteries wore out.
That's if you didn't lose them, but that's another story.
If you didn't lose them.
And so I guess the intent is to keep us buying and buying, because I imagine companies don't want us to fix our own stuff because they're in the business of selling new stuff.
We've been very happily on this treadmill of obsolescence where, yeah, every year there's a new phone. The camera's better. It's different colors. So yeah, just get a new one. That's the default. But one that's not sustainable from an environmental perspective, it's not a sane strategy for us as consumers. We have better things to spend our money on. But also the products don't get that much better anymore.
So Kyle, I'm listening to you talk about this and how you've created this massive community. And I'm thinking about how you decided then to take it to the next step to change the laws around this. Why did you feel what you were doing in building this community that it wasn't enough?
We'd had the wiki online for a couple of years when we were just running the numbers on how many new gadgets there were. I think we saw the explosion of Android devices and we realized there were 5,000 different Android phones out there. And if I have to get every single one and take them apart and write a service manual for it, that's just very hard for even our global community to do. And so we started saying, well, what are other ways to tackle this problem? How can we bring manufacturers into the loop? And I tried reaching out to the manufacturers directly and working through some green environmental incentive programs to ask them nicely, hey, we're enabling people to fix things. How great is that? And we were just met with silence and resistance. There was absolutely no interest in expanding the repair market. And so we started looking for other avenues. And one model that we saw that had been successful was in the automotive world. There are right to repair laws on the books for cars. There have been for a very long time. So if you think about it from a car perspective, you can go to your local BMW dealer, and of course they can fix your BMW. You can also go to your local auto shop. It doesn't matter if it's a brand new car or a 10-year-old car. The local mechanics have information from Ford and GM and BMW on how to fix all these cars. Not because the car manufacturers want to, but because they're required to under law. So it's the same thing. If your local computer repair shop wants to be able to fix an iPhone, do they have access to the same tools that Apple is using at the Genius Bar? And so we started looking at legislative venues and decided to focus on European and American states as kind of two avenues to focus on building out right to repair legislation.
After the break, Mr. iFixit goes to Washington. Okay, so you've decided to try and change the laws around the right to repair. How did that first bill in the US get written? What was in it?
I wanted to sort of prove to myself that I could get a bill passed. And so before we tackled the broad right to repair bill, I said, could we achieve a small victory? And around this time, it was illegal to unlock a cell phone and move it from one carrier to another. So it was illegal to take a phone from AT&T and move it to T-Mobile. And that was a stupid law, and everyone agreed that it was stupid. And so I bought a tie and went to DC and spent about a year kind of agitating, and we got a law passed to make cell phone unlocking legal again. And that kind of beginning helped us build the coalition. We started a right to repair coalition, and then we took the automotive law. The most recent auto right to repair law was passed in Massachusetts. We took that automotive law and we basically deleted the word car from it. And we said, basically, if you make a product that has electronics, you need to make service parts, information, and tools available. And then we started shopping around the state legislators. South Dakota was the first state that introduced the bill. Since then, we've had 40 different states introduce versions of electronics right to repair.
And how did that go?
We lost, and then we lost again, and then we lost again. We lost over 100 times in a row.
Really? 100 times in a row? I mean, what was going through your head? I mean, were you frustrated?
It's intensely frustrating working through the process. You realize how much money influences the legislative process. What was interesting about those 100 losses in a row was none of them were actual up or down votes. They were very good at killing the idea, killing the legislation before it ever got to a floor vote. Because this is such a populist idea that no legislator wants to be on the record voting against people's ability to fix their stuff. But they also have campaign funds they need to raise. And so the question that's running through my mind is, if you look at the arc of history and where we're going to end up, where is the electronics industry? Where are we as consumers going to be in 100 years? There's this inflection point that's happening around software moving into all of our products. And you have electronics in your refrigerator and your toaster. That inflection point is the point where things stop being fixable by regular people. And if we get too far along that path, there will be so much money entrenched in that way of running the economy that will be impossible to pass policy to go back in the other direction.
I think companies, though, have argued that being compelled to release more details about their products is an intellectual property issue. I mean, what do you say to that argument?
That absolutely is an argument that they use. They use it regularly. And I think it's interesting because, okay, so imagine that you're John Deere and you have your trade secret proprietary information. Are you going to be giving that information to tens of thousands of your technicians at John Deere dealerships around the country? that they're not your employees, right? They're working at your dealerships. If it really is a trade secret that is going to enable China to copy your latest tractor, you're probably not going to distribute it that widely. And there's always a line in the sand inside these companies between the engineering information that's the trade secrets and the service information that's what they're sharing with their authorized service network. And the idea of right to repair is, hey, if you have an authorized service network, provide the same information to independents that your authorized network has. That's information to fix things, not to copy it.
While the right to repair movement was losing to the tech giants in state legislatures around the United States, the fight was shaping up differently in Europe. In France, Kyle helped create legislation that compels companies to publicize something called a repairability index. That's a score right next to the price that tells consumers how easy a tech product is to fix if it ever breaks. It's modeled on a system that iFixit had been using on its own website for years.
And if you look at consumer behavior, it's really changing it. 8 in 10 French consumers say that they will pick a more repairable product over their favorite brand.
But back home, it wasn't until President Biden took office that the right to repair movement started gaining traction.
The single thing that helped U.S. legislation along was the Federal Trade Commission came out and released a big report called Nixing the Fix, which kind of eviscerated the manufacturer arguments against right to repair. And the way that lobbying works is we come in with an idea and we have our arguments in favor of it, and the manufacturers show up and they have their arguments against it. And the manufacturers are throwing up what we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And they would say, if people can fix their phones, they will hurt themselves. And we're like, how are they possibly going to hurt themselves? The only people I see hurting themselves are people like using a phone with a cracked screen and cutting their finger. And so what was fantastic about the Federal Trade Commission report was they took all of that manufacturer input, they listened to all their arguments, they had a big listening session, they listened to us, and they had their experts dive into it. And then they put out a report completely eviscerating every single claim that the manufacturers had made. And then President Biden followed up on that with an executive order calling for every government agency to look for opportunities to increase competition in the marketplace. And one of the major tenets of his competition executive order was for agencies to look for opportunities to enforce the right to repair. As it became clear that legislation seemed inevitable, we saw companies start to move. So Apple, at the tail end of 2021, launched a self-service repair program. And finally, for the first time since the Apple II, they actually posted the service manuals for some of their products, which was really exciting. And they launched this program where consumers could buy parts from them, but there were a number of catches. The catch was Apple interpreted the legislation very literally, and they said, well, we're going to give you exactly the same tools that the Apple geniuses have. Which it turns out is 70 pounds of tools, and they will ship them to you in 2 Pelican cases. So I went ahead and ordered
2 Pelican cases.
So it's $1,200 worth of tools. It comes in 2 massive, these are like the Pelican waterproof cases. They're very nice cases. And these are these huge, complicated, expensive jigs for doing repairs the way that Apple thinks that they should be done. And I think, you know, if you step back a moment and you say, wait a second, why do you need 70 pounds of tools, $1,200 worth of tools to fix a cell phone? Maybe your design is flawed.
Or maybe giving people that much stuff might disincentivize them to use it. Because if I got 2 Pelican cases and that many tools, I would not feel very confident that I would be able to repair my phone.
Yeah, I think we call this malicious compliance. It is. It's an interesting approach. It's kind of clear that they're saying, well, we really still don't want you to fix things, but we're going to symbolically bow to public pressure and come up with a program that will meet the letter of the law, but not the intent.
We reached out to Apple, and a spokesperson told us the company, quote, emphatically disagrees that their self-service repair program is malicious compliance. And over the past 3 years, Apple said it's nearly doubled the number of service locations across the country that have access to its repair tools and information. After the FTC released its report, the right to repair movement in the United States started picking up momentum.
So the first bill that we passed was this last summer in Colorado. We had a Afghanistan war veteran who was a helicopter pilot and became paralyzed and is in a wheelchair. And he introduced a electric wheelchair focused right to repair bill. And that was our first legislative success. It passed. It went into effect January 1st, 2023. Which is very exciting because if you talk with anyone who uses a powered wheelchair, repair is a real challenge for them. There's monopoly control, and it can take 2 or 3 months to get a spare part sometimes.
Yeah. One thing that might make me pause when we're talking about how great it is to fix things is it's one thing to be talking about fixing an iPhone, a tablet, even a refrigerator. It's another when we're talking about machinery that has potentially much higher stakes to working on it, medical tools, farming equipment. I mean, how do you think about that? The idea that some stuff you might only want experts to fix.
Well, in the case of farm equipment, the farmers are the experts. Talk with any farmer, and they spend much of their time fixing the equipment around the farm. And the repair has been the status quo. We have been fixing medical equipment. Every hospital has a team of repair technicians. They're called biomedical engineers, and they're licensed and insured and certified, and they fix things for the hospital without the help of manufacturers. Every farmer has been fixing things forever. What is new is ways that manufacturers are identifying that they can use repair obstacles as a way to create a service monopoly.
So we've been talking about how long you've been fighting this particular fight and all the hurdles along the way. I'm going to catch us up to today because I'm talking to you just a few weeks after Governor Kathy Hochul of New York signed the country's first broad right to repair bill into law. What will that law change for me as an average consumer?
The New York law says that starting in July of 2023, all new products have to have those fundamentals, service information, parts, and tools available. So if a manufacturer has a repair network for a product, if Apple's running Genius Bar repairs, if Samsung has a repair network for their devices, then they have to make available that same parts, tools, and information to the rest of us.
Will the changes be limited to New York State?
Well, that's what's interesting, and this is why we've been focused on a state-level strategy, is I don't think so. I don't think this is limited to New York State. If the manufacturers are going to make the information available online, why not just make that available globally? So we are enthusiastic about it. Unfortunately, the governor made a number of last-minute changes to the bill that watered it down. And so I would say the reaction from the repair community has been a little bit mixed. On the one hand, we are thrilled that we got our first ever law through and that the fundamentals of right to repair are the law of the land. On the other hand, the law that she signed, unlike the law that the legislature passed, only applies to new products introduced after July. So it's not retroactive, which is frustrating because if you have a thing that you currently own that you want to be able to fix, she exempted that. So that's probably the biggest bummer. And so we are anticipating other state laws will fix the loophole that Governor Hochul introduced.
Kyle, you've been in this community and arguing for expanding the right to repair for nearly 2 decades. And it does seem like things have changed now. Why do you think the past couple of years have seen this uptick in awareness and momentum for the movement? I mean, what's changed? Are we just more skeptical of these sort of behemoth companies?
This is part of the broader uprising against big tech. I mean, for a long time, we've been thrilled, we've been excited. Hey, there's a new, phone number 6, phone number 7, whether it's the Galaxy S7 or the iPhone 7, iPhone 13. At some point, that starts to plateau, and I think you don't see the lines out in front of these retail stores when the new products get announced like you did a decade ago. The environmental impact of manufacturing the things that we have is significant. The phone that's in your pocket, which weighs like 8 ounces, took over 250 pounds of raw material dug out of the ground to make. If every American were to use their phone just a year longer, it would be the equivalent of taking 700,000 cars off the road. And so to have a world that is disposable, you're talking about literal mountains dug out of the ground every year just to keep up with our gadget habit.
Listening to you talk, it does remind me of the fact that for environmental reasons alone, we need to start thinking about our relationship to the things we own differently. How do we rewire our brains, though, to be less dependent on the dopamine hit we get from buying stuff? I still love buying stuff.
Buying stuff is fun. I guess I would say maybe the thing that is better than that, what if we could just save the world through sheer laziness? Like it is actually a lot of work to get a new phone and transfer your contacts and your apps over and everything else. If you could just if you drop in the new battery in your current phone, it will feel like a new phone. So that's my counter is like, let's spend our time doing other things, rather than configuring new technology all the time. And so let me be clear, this right to repair does not mean that you have to fix all of your own stuff. It means that it should be possible for you to get it fixed somehow. Whether you have a friend who is tech savvy or excited about opening things up and wants to do it, or if you want to take it down to a neighborhood repair shop. You think about like what is the nexus of a small town America? You have a gas station, you have a grocery store, and a car repair shop. You should probably also have an electronics repair shop. So I think we have an opportunity to create the neighborhood that we want to live in. And so I would encourage people, whether you fix something yourself or not, like think about spending a little bit more money on repairs and less on buying new things.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
That's Kyle Wiens. And just this past weekend, John Deere signed a memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation. In theory, the agreement will make it easier for farmers and third-party technicians to repair their farming equipment without legislative action. First Person is a production of New York Times Opinion. This episode was produced by Wyatt Orm with help from Derek Arthur. It was edited by Annabelle Bacon and Kari Pitkin. Mixing by Carol Saburo and Isaac Jones. Original music by Isaac Jones, Sonia Herrero, Pat McCusker, and Carol Saburo. Fact-checking by Mary Marge Locker, Michelle Harris, and Kate Sinclair. The rest of the First Person team includes Stephanie Joyce, Olivia Natt, Sophia Alvarez-Boyd, Rhiannon Corby, and Jillian Weinberger. Special thanks to Christina Samuelewski, Shannon Busta, Allison Benedict, Annie Rose Strasser, and Katie Kingsbury.